Good morning to everyone. I was listening to the previous presentation by Victoria, and I was very interested because, in fact, what she's doing is exactly what we are doing, and also with the same people. So she's working with Marijn in the Netherlands, and we're also working with Marijn in the Netherlands. So the idea of having a network is, I think, it's very important and is the way to go forward. And this is one of the reasons why we're very grateful for the invitation to Ukraine and do the presentation of our research group and all the work that we're doing. I also would like to tell you that we are advertising to get some students to work with us for the next 3 years. So if you were interested in working in any of the topics that we'll be presenting, please send us your applications because we really would like to work across Europe, because I think that's the way. We would like, Carmen and I would like to present media accessibility research and training. And this is what we do in our research group that is called Transmedia Catalonia. Anna couldn't be here, who is the leader, and Estela is in hospital with COVID. So the two that left behind is Karma and myself. The group is called Transmedia Catalonia, and if you want to have more information, you can go online and check what we do there. Something very important for us is that we no longer think of the end users as the blind or the deaf, or we work within the concept of universal design, and we believe that something that is useful for the blind would also be useful for someone who cannot read. And that could be, for example, a migrant or an elderly person, or someone who's not elderly and is not blind, but is in a public space very far away from a screen, for example. So we've realized that accessibility services are not just for those who have any disability, and that is following the clinical model, but for everyone, and that's our approach. And we also believe that look at people's capabilities, not disabilities. And in that way, our research could be more comprehensive. And in fact, it could be used for the widest possible section of the society. And that's what we have done in several projects that we have, like Mediaverse, So Close, which is to do with migration and displacement, Attraction, which is to do with opera, Rebuild, which is to do with migration again, and Helios, which is to do with decentralized networks. In all of them, what we research is the interaction of people with systems as an alternative communication, and that's what works really well for us. The solutions that we have to find to overcome our linguistic barriers. This is something called translation. Yes, we are in the faculty of translation, but we've realized that linguistic translation is a part of accessibility in itself. So it's a bit strange, but we are sort of tilting the concept, and we're moving from translation studies to media accessibility, and we consider that linguistic translation is part of accessibility. We also overcome sensorial barriers, that is to do with sight or with touch or with visuals. Cognitive barriers, the spectrum is really wide, from aphasia, for example, to dyslexia, to all these issues. We have social barriers, of course, and we have technological barriers. All of these we take into consideration in our research. Something that is very characteristic from our research is that it is user-centric. So we also always start asking for specifications to the end users. And the end users could be people, but they could also be technologists. So engineers who want to develop, for example, ear-catch that Victoria was presenting earlier, we would ask also these people, what would they like to do? How would they like to do? And we would match that with what the end users would like to have. The idea is that we get a more, the end user gets at the end of the day what they expected, not what the engineer wanted to do. So that's also what we are doing, the methodology, the ethical procedures for any tests we take into consideration, and we do that through the special committee that we have at the university that issues these certificates for interaction with end users. And we also do the knowledge transfer to society through standardization. This is something we're very active. We work at ISO in doing the standardization for subtitles, for audio description, for easy to read, for sign language. I think someone asked earlier, is there any standard practices across the world? And the answer is yes, there are, and they're called ISO. You can download them from the ISO website. I think some of them you have to pay, but you can always send me an email and I can send them to you. And then what you do is this universal or these international standards, what you do then is transpose them to your country, to your alphabet, and to your language. Because clearly you have to have some sort of a culture-specific issues there. So that's what we do. And the last thing we do in our research group is training. What we would like to present, Carmen and myself, is what we do with subtitling, audio description, easy to understand language, game accessibility, and moving beyond disabilities. So for subtitling, I think Victoria was saying that with ear catch, you can go to any cinema and get the subtitles. And something that we've been looking, it's what is the best way to see subtitles on a screen? Because there are many different ways to project subtitles, because behind that, there are different applications to convert the subtitle into lines and break the subtitles and present the subtitles. So, for example, something that we are very proud of is that we managed to convince most broadcasters in Europe that are showing one word as you say it. It's a really bad way to speak. And sorry, it is a very bad way to read, because then your eye is going to every single word. You're just playing a cat and mouse game. And that way, it's a very, very terrible way to spend your time on the subtitle and not sharing your time, the split attention on whatever is there on the screen. So, though this was a very popular way to show subtitles in the past in most televisions in Europe, now hardly anyone does it like that. And that was because we did the research and we showed them that these applications should stop and should show the subtitles in blocks. So then we can somehow read in the normal reading way. We've also done a lot of work to do with how is the contrast of the colors, the contrast, the size of the subtitles. If you go to Netflix, for example, you can choose, you can have personalized the subtitles, and you can have the personalized. This is the type of research that we do, and then we feed this into a standardization, and we also feed that into big companies. And as Victoria was saying, the other thing that we've done is to make sure that reading in small screens, in large screens, in tablets, in screens, and in mobiles, it is comfortable, and it is the least disruptive as possible, because you're always going to have the split attention with whatever narrative is going on the screen. So it's very important to make sure that reading becomes not a struggle, but as easy and as disruptive as possible, to not break with the magic of and the engagement of being inside a movie or a series or whatever you're there. Because subtitles in that way, if they really become the main feature, they really disrupt what you are there for, which is not to read subtitles, it is for something else. Something that we have been working very much is the concept that we now can get any media, not just as one way, linear way, as it was in the past, but we can get media in different devices at the same time, in the same room. So basically, it's exactly what Victoria was saying, that you can then choose If you want the subtitles at the bottom, is the subtitles that we could have, you could choose on the television. And in Netflix, you can do that now. A few years ago, this was incredibly difficult to understand, but now we do that. But also with the subtitles with different alphabets as well. So at the same time. So that is something that we've been, and we're still doing a lot of research. For live subtitling, it is amazingly challenging. It's perhaps the most challenging of all. For many reasons, basically because you are working against the time, as any interpreter knows, you're working against the time. And also because while the interpreter says whatever, and words are, fly away, the subtitler gets the words on the screen. And that fact really affects very much the credibility of whatever the person is saying. You might be in a political speech, for example, and a stupid mistake. For example, a funny one was when they said that the Queen of England, it was on heroin, and it was her own. So the subtitle should have read in her own, and in subtitle she's on heroin. That really killed the whole program, because everybody was keeping the attention on heroin, not on her own, and not on the Queen, definitely. And that definitely changes the whole idea of the program. So it is very important, and the research on how to optimize this delay of the live subtitler, and the subtitles going on the screen. And for that, we are working very hard on standards, and the standards, as I said earlier, that have to be transposed to each country. So in a way, each country would have different guidelines, but we all have same standards, because at the end of the day, we're all the same, in the sense that we all read in the same way. Two-line subtitles, it is good. Now, how the syntactic breaking of the subtitles, it depends on the language, but the two-line subtitles, it is always the same. Or for example, the contrast of colors, it's always the same. It's a physiological issue. It's not to do with your language specific issue. So the contrast it can be a universal, definitely, and it's no problem. So there are some issues to do with subtitling that are universal, that are international, and there are issues that are language dependent and culture dependent. And those are the ones that we have to make sure that we transpose into each different language. And that you have guidelines is basic, because then you can, both the end user and both the producer can have a benchmarking where they can work towards quality. Otherwise, there is no quality. Everybody can do what they want, and then everything is fine. So it's also very important that we have a project that is dealing with this, and in fact has prepared a lot of self-training materials for live subtitling. It is free, it is online, so all you have to do is to download the materials and use them in the class, for example, with your students. Another project is to do with how we make the screens, the interaction, the interaction with the screen accessible, because it's very good to have subtitles, audio description and sign language, but if the end user cannot access the screen and cannot read the screen, then clearly there is another barrier, and that barrier has to be broken down, and using what is called W3C standard, the WCAG, and that is very difficult to follow. So we are in a European project called Impact, and what we're doing is trying to make some training materials to comply with WCAG standard W3C. Victoria previously had a fantastic presentation about audio description. It is something that it is quite widespread in some countries in Europe. For example, In the UK, it's 20% of everything that is online. In Spain, we are getting to 10%, which is quite a lot. So there is some basic, I think someone also was asking to Victoria, how do you do? Yes, there is some basic guidelines for everyone, and is to do what is happening on the screen, where is the person in the screen, when is happening, to say any words that are on the screen, then you have to say them aloud. So there is this generic guidelines that they have to be applied. And then there is the language and the culture guidelines for your own localization of the audio description. You can also translate audio descriptions like any text. So then audio description becomes a normal text type for audiovisual translation, and then you can do that. Again, there is, we had a previous project that is not here called AdLab, 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 and AdLab Pro. It is online, and there is massive, and in fact, we did that project with the same guys as Ear Catch with Merain. So there is loads of materials there to teach your students or to teach yourself how to do audio description, and it is free and it is online. So if you want to, you can go there and download and do your own courses. There is even an editor for audio description to do there. And if you have any questions, you can always send me an email, and we will be very happy to answer that. What we do with research in audio description is trying to understand the speed of audio description, because perhaps we could either increase the speed of the audio description or not. And then, because, for example, something that blind people do is that they received the speech, the alternative speech, in a very, very fast reproduction possibility. That's something that we are trying to understand if it works or it doesn't work. The voices, if you use synthetic voices, the segmentation, the new formats, that's the type of research we do with audio description. We also have another project called RAD, and the idea is that in the past, everybody said that audio description have to be neutral, have to be objective, which does not exist. And in fact, a lot of work by the Polish colleagues show that the more engaging and the more interesting is the audio description, the more engaged is the audience with whatever they are there. And the more boring and objective it is, the audio description, there is less engagement with the activity that they've gone to see, or they've gone to participate. So the idea of neutrality is something that we are looking in this project. And now is moved to easy to understand language. It is a new, in sense, the newest audiovisual service or accessibility service format that we are developing. It is across Europe in all the languages. It's called Easy to Read. If you go to the website, you would find the Easy to Read Association in Europe. And we're also, Anna Matamala, who is not here, unfortunately, she is co-editing the ISO Easy to Read standard with Sweden. So yes, we're even going all the way there. And for that, we have an easy project called EASIT, but I think my colleague, Karma Mangiron, will take over from here. Karma, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Pilar. I think if you don't mind, maybe the slides or... okay, I'll see if I can share
I'm
now.
not sharing. Now you share.
Okay, see if... because I'm not sure how... Because Zoom, for me now, it's looking a bit strange. Can you see my screen? No? Pilar, can you see it? No. So I
can see you, but I cannot see your screen.
Okay, what about now, maybe?
Now.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you, Pilar.
Yes, I will silence myself.
Thank you. So, as Pilar was saying, Ana Matamala is leading this EasyIt project at UAB, in which we are basically, it's actually coming to a conclusion. It will be finishing now in August, and we have been working on three main areas: easy to understand audio descriptions, easy to understand audiovisual news, which this is also quite new because we're going a bit beyond translation, so also going into accessibility for the news. So the news should be easy to understand for everybody and easy to understand subtitles. And we have created a lot of materials as well, as Pilar was mentioning, same as in other projects that you will be able to download from the web. And you can see here the outline of some of the units that cover different aspects such as media accessibility, easy to understand language, subtitling, audio description, the profession, etc. So this is going to be very interesting to introduce this new access service. Next, I'll talk briefly about video games, because we also work on game accessibility, because games are becoming, as you all know, more and more present. They're used for educational, therapeutical issues as well. And of course, new technological developments erect new barriers, and most mainstream games are not accessible. And the thing is that game accessibility lies between accessibility to more traditional, with commas, inverted commas, because they're not really traditional, but TV, cinema, etc., and then software and web accessibility because of the interactivity that is so important in video games. So therefore, the concept that we apply to game accessibility, it's based on usability. Everybody should be able to use a game according to their capabilities. Game software and hardware should be adaptable, so it has to be compatible with external device or technologies such as a screen reader or head mouse, etc. And also localization as well, because as Pilar was saying, for us, accessibility also includes linguistic accessibility. And the problems that users have are that basically you cannot receive the stimuli, or that you can receive it, but you cannot determine what the response you need to provide to the game, or that you know what you need to do, but you cannot provide the input to the game because you cannot manipulate the interface. So this would affect users with different types of functional diversity. So in the RAD project that Pilar was mentioning, we have different areas that we're studying. One of them is AD and prosody and neutrality, and another one is game accessibility and how to make games more accessible for blind users through audio description and other technologies such as text-to-speech. And as part of this, we have done descriptive research, but also experimental research with users. We did a survey with over 110 questionnaires for blind users. And also we have done 16 interviews. And it's interesting because people think that blind people do not play games. And of course, not the majority do, but quite a few do, and many more would do if games were more accessible. So an inclusive approach to game accessibility would be necessary. Of course, not a one-size-fits-all, because that's impossible, but allowing users to customize the accessibility options that they need. And finally, we also in Transmedia Catalonia, we put a lot of emphasis in training, sharing all the research and the training courses that we create, and also networking, as Pilar was saying, across Europe, across Spain, because of course, the more that we work together, the better results and the faster we will achieve them. So we have some specialization courses in accessibility, management and promotion that lasts 12 weeks, also accessible digital communication. We are also part of these networks, the LeadMe network, which is across Europe, and aims to provide stakeholders in media accessibility with resources, new technology, information and legislation in order to contribute to making accessibility more widespread. And LeadMe also organizes summer schools, which are great. Then there's also the ALMA network, which is for accessibility in minority languages. And then we also have the MAP platform, which is the media accessibility platform. You have a screenshot there, and this is also very, very useful because you can find information about any projects, latest news on media accessibility, publications, training courses, events, even an accessometer where you can find a world map, accessibility map of legislation, standards, and guidelines. And of course, if you have anything that you would like to contribute with information that we might not know about your countries or anything like that, you please feel free to contact us. So I think this is it from us. So thank you very much. And I think I will stop sharing, because then you can see us better. So thank you. And if you have any questions, we will be delighted to take them.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions? Чи є в когось з аудиторії питання? Зараз.
Hello. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I have one question relating easy to understand language. There is another initiative, it's more technical, it's simplified technical English, maybe you've heard of it. Do you contact with those groups or do you keep in touch with them or whatever?
Yeah. Pilar, I don't know. Yeah, I think, of course, Ana Matamala has been, well, and the research project, they have been in touch with different entities, bodies, and people working on this. And I'm sure that for standardization, they're looking into this. But Pilar might know more than me about that.
Yes. There are two, like everything in life, there Pepsi Cola and Coca-Cola. There are two groups, the plain language and the easy to read language. And they even have two different ISO standards, the plain language ISO standard and the easy to read. Would they eventually join? Coca-Cola and Pepsi Cola never joined, or the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, so I don't know if they would ever get together. It's quite normal that we call things two different ways, and none of the groups are prepared to give ownership to what they've developed. So yes, we are aware that there are two different groups, that they want not exactly the same, but basically that communication is simpler or easier. How you do that is basically exactly the same for one group and for the other group, and that's where we stand. There is not one better than the other. It's as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? Well, I see that for Ukraine, still aspiring to join the EU, there is still a great path forward, but it also means that we live in the exciting times when we are the people who can make these things right. Thank you very much to join us from Catalonia. I hope all the best for you.